my name is Sarah Beth, and this is What I Wish I Knew About Christian Sexuality, Episode 9, Lessons from Song of Songs. So we've gone through this entire series so far, just slowly building up on our knowledge about both Christianity and sexuality, and we've hit the mother lode of where they combine and become one, and that is the book of Song of Songs, also known as Song of Solomon. We're going to dive in the 8 lessons that we can learn from each of the chapters in Song of Songs. So a little bit about Song of Songs. It is a saucy book hidden in the midst of all the other wisdom books, and it is said to have been written by Solomon, but no one's really confirmed it to be sure. It is short, but it is essential to our conversation that we've been having throughout this series. And a little bit of help for understanding where we're going with this book today is to know that we're reading this with some adult eyes. I was told that once, and it revolutionized the way that I read this book. This book mainly follows the perspective of a young woman and her relationship with a young man. And some argue that this book is about the relationship between the church and Jesus, but I think that completely undermines the availability of this book in the Bible.
This is a load of barnacles.
An example of romantic sexual love that we can learn from and replicate in our own relationships. We can also see this being true due to the popularity of love poetry during this era, meaning that this book should be read for what it is, not read into any other way. So like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be breaking this up into 8 lessons that I learned from reading each of the 8 chapters of Song of Songs. Let's get into it. The first lesson is trust the people that love you more. In chapter 1, basically the young woman is talking and she's proud to be taken up to her lover's bedroom, and she begs him to kiss her over and over again. She compares herself to a vineyard that produces sweet wine that makes her lover drunk and is enchanted by the fragrance of her perfume. She then describes a sachet of myrrh, which is meant to represent passion, as he kisses her and lies between her breasts. They are in mutual passion and love in a time when men took advantage of women. And this is an excellent example of a healthy relationship that is mutually based in love. She even goes on to say, "You are so handsome, my love, more pleasing beyond words," and openly admits how much he pleases her. I think that this can be boiled down to this idea of like the first person is going to be the one, and purity culture. You know, we're so afraid of messing up for some reason. And some people do get married because they had sex with the first person that they dated before marriage, and they feel stuck in that. And then there's this other idea that, you know, we need to trust God more in who he brings into our lives and brings out of our lives. Sometimes those relationships may end, and it's important to know that all these things happen for a reason. And in those moments, as long as you have found someone that deserves your trust, you should be able to trust them in return. The next one is don't be ashamed or guilty of the gifts God gave you. In chapter 2, symbolism is steamy. The young woman compares herself to a lily and the young man to an apple tree, which may surprise you to understand that this is actually in reference to oral sex for the remainder of the book. As she says, "I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit, and he browses among the lilies like a gazelle or young stag."
I feel like a deer in the headlights of love.
This shows that oral sex is a normal part of a sexual relationship, and it did not start with porn. She later says, "My lover is mine and I am his," which is huge because it's mutual ownership, obviously not literal, of one another in a relationship. I think this is also important because it shows physical intimacy when each are ready for it. You know, the mutual love and respect for one another translates into how they treat each other in their physical relationship. And remember that God gave us these gifts. That is a core concept, to not feel ashamed of the gifts that God gave you. And so the third lesson, when the time and person is right, you won't have to feel timid or ashamed for your sexuality. So let's define what shame is. Shame is the fear of doing something wrong. So I have a question for you. If God says that something is okay, then why are we ashamed when we do it? In chapter 3, it starts off with her having a yearning for her lover. Her sexual appetite is okay, it's healthy. She even goes on to search for him through the city, meaning that she actively pursues him. This is another like hashtag girl power move. You know, as a woman in this, light, I was given a lot of advice in my youth group that was not very good. That basically, like, I had to wait for a guy to approach me. And when that did happen, it was not good for me because I felt like I was just taking whatever came for me. My current relationship actually worked out where I pursued him and he wanted someone to pursue him because he was tired of pursuing people. Sometimes it's okay to be the pursuer and it can go back and forth and it will be fine. No one should be threatened in any way. And so going back to the lesson at hand, like 1 John 4:18 says, perfect love drives out fear. While this is about God, his love for us is an example of how we should love each other. Shame is a form of fear, but whether it's with God or with each other, love knows no fear. The woman then doesn't have to be ashamed of pursuing this man because she loves him and she's not afraid through that love. Going into the 4th lesson, that in the right circumstances, sex is beautiful. It basically starts off with a man slowly going down her body and praising every part of it, but this can also show how when you feel safe with someone, sex can be a beautiful thing, and loving one another's bodies and everything that a person is can be a beautiful thing as well. He's not just praising her body, but he's also praising everything about her in the process. He goes on to describe her love as better than wine. Remember the symbolism from earlier, Miss Vinya? And her perfume more fragrant than spices. Same with you, Miss Mar. And after this, we have our first signs of penetrative sex. This is also interesting because the couple isn't married yet from what we know of. I have yet to figure out what this means, but I'll just leave that there so you know about it. One of the core verses from this is to wait for love until the time is right, which is the core verse that goes with the core concept of sex is a responsibility. Because it takes the right people with the right intentions for this love to be beautiful and intimate and loving. It takes building intimacy emotionally and mentally and all the other places for you to feel safe with your partner and for this physical intimacy to show through. And moreover, this sets the word purity in a new light. Before we were focused on purity culture and stuff like that. In this case, I think that this shows a pure love for one another. And that type of purity, I wish we could just highlight more and more because it's genuine, it's authentic, and it's just where love is at. So now we have lesson number 5, which is don't be ashamed of sharing your love and making it appropriately public with others. In chapter 5, the man says, I've entered my garden, my treasure, my bride, and she is sweet. While this is blatantly penetrative sex, the point is that he enjoys it and holds no shame. Moreover, it's consensual, as she tells him, O lover and beloved, eat and drink, yes, drink deeply of your love. Despite this passion and lovemaking, we see another side where others have brought shame to their relationship. But love has made her resilient. A specific verse in chapter 5 that I want to highlight is, as the young woman describes this man with honor, she says, he is desirable in every way. Such a woman of Jerusalem is my lover, my friend. I think that this really shows the relationship status that they have. She did not friend zone him, but they are truly in love. And, in a marriage, I think this is important to balance that friendship and romantic side. So that you are truly partners in every aspect of the word. I think in Christian culture, so many people get caught up in being equally yoked, and that's what a Christian relationship should look like. But we should also ask, what does a healthy relationship look like? And that balance there is really important too. And they aren't ashamed of being in love in public. Like, they're not throwing it down in public, but they are still in love with each other. And despite the people that shame them, their love powers through. And I think that while that may be cheesy, a lot of the time in Christian environments, they try to separate men and women because even those that are dating, for whatever reason, like no purple is a thing. And I think that's silly because if people are truly loving one another, then you should trust that they will respect each other and not just start making out in front of everybody. Okay, now lesson number 6. Love is a powerful thing, you must be ready for it. We've kind of been hinting at this through the whole lesson giving thing that I've been doing. But in chapter 6, it really shows when he says, I am my lover's and my lover's is mine. Another key verse for this chapter is in verses 8 to 9 when he says that he would still choose his love, his perfect one. The fact that he would continually choose that person shows his devotion to her. Again, there's this mutual ownership of one another, this agreement in a relationship. I remember when I was young in high school especially, I was so obsessed with getting into a relationship. Even in my first relationship, I had a lot of anxiety around it because I didn't really know what to do. I was really insecure about it. But I was like, no, this is what I want. And so in a way I forced it, and it wasn't a good relationship for me. And I think that that's important to remember. And it's something that you kind of have to go through yourself to really understand. It's important to know that love is a powerful thing. And so you need to be ready for it. And now we're into lesson 7, which is to seek relationships built on equality, communication, and genuine love for one another. This chapter also starts off with foreplay as he makes his way around her body. He's exploring her in whole, and then he exclaims, "Oh, how beautiful you are," showing his complete adoration of her. In my notes, I wrote, grabbing her boob moment with a quote from verse 7 to 8. "You are slender like a palm tree, and your breasts are like clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit." While we are totally embracing the normality of sexuality, I think that this is a funny verse. Anyway, so this part is important because we see that he is exploring everything that there is about her. He's exploring all the aspects of intimacy, basically. And I think a lot of Christians, because they don't know any better, they think like, oh, it's just penetrative sex. And then it can get even further simplified into it's just for procreation. But this type of stuff is what makes all of it so beautiful and such a gift from God, that he gave us these things that bring us pleasure and these ways to love one another. And you have those special moments with that person that builds the physical intimacy that can also build off of the emotional and mental intimacy. And that brings us into the final lesson, that love is empowering. In Song of Songs, chapter 8, verse 6, it says, "Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy as enduring as a grace. Love flashes like fire, the brightest kind of flame." And for this, I think it shows that love is almost like supernatural. You can't really like boil it down to anything in particular, right? Like that's kind of been a conversation that's been had. We can only understand the most basic parts of it, yet we will never be able to comprehend its power. Her power over herself because of how much her lover loves her is crazy. It's important to acknowledge how much a relationship can change things. I talked about this with a lot of the people I interviewed and with myself, that finding the right person completely changed my perspective on life, my perspective on sexuality, etc. And it's just crazy how empowering love is when you're with the right person and in the right environment, in the right circumstances. And so the book ends kind of abruptly. It almost makes you wonder whether parts of it are missing, but then that starts to bring in questions like, well, why is a book so saucy included in the Bible? So I considered making a conclusion video, but I just wanted to include it in here because it's kind of brief. Most of the stuff that I'm gonna say is all in the intro. I've been so blessed to be able to do this project. It's been so much fun. It's been a long time in the making, and so I hope that it affects you the way that it affected me, and I'd love to hear your feedback in any of the videos. I have been so excited to put this series out. I would really appreciate that if you like this video and any of the other videos, that you give me a thumbs up and that you smash the subscribe button. What's next for me? But right now I'm in school. I might be MIA for a little bit, but by summer, hopefully, I can start making some videos. Maybe we'll have some goofy fun times. So I'm not always serious. So it might take a hard left, but I hope that you stay tuned and I will see you in the future. Thanks so much. Bye.